What's up, guys? Ronin Man here. One of the biggest problems in understanding women or understanding people is that when you're wrong about something, it's very difficult to correct course. And the reason is because, when you're right, when you have an opinion, you want to keep that. You believe that that's correct, right? And then also, other people are kind of, a lot of personalities are scared to say, hey, I don't think that's correct. I think this is correct, right? So if you have an opinion like about a girl or whatever, your friends are just going to sit there and go, okay, whatever, right? But the problem is if you want to understand women, then you gotta have friends that are willing to tell you, I don't think that you're correct in your, I think this is what's actually happening, right? And that's how I got so good with women was hanging out with guys who we constantly would say, hey, she did this, and I think this, and then friends would say, no, she wasn't doing that at all. She was doing this, and through that honest, banter and dialogue, we reach greater truths. It's a little bumpy and it's not easy, but it's definitely the way to go for getting smarter, 100%. That's something we do at summits all the time, is we think, well, I don't know if that was actually what it was. What do you think about this? And we'll say, there's no need to say anything like negative about somebody, because anybody who's on the search for truth is going to be constantly wrong, right? Until you know what I mean? It's just going to be constant, right? And the easiest thing to do is put your head in the sand and say, I'm right all the time. That's the way it is. That's what most people do, right? But Ronin guys are like, no, I want to know. Like, what? Maybe I'm wrong. Like, what could have happened, right? So anyway, the statement I got here recently was, it was a kind of analysis. This guy, he met a girl, and then they were talking, and it was going good, and then he said something, what are you doing here? She said, well, I'm here to meet, and then her eyes fluttered, and she looked around. You could tell she was thinking. That was very solid, because this is all in like, 200ths of a second, right? This is a very solid observation on his part, is that then she said, I'm here to meet my brother. And he realized it was that moment when she decided not to say boyfriend, right? So anyway, a few minutes later, her boyfriend shows up, and he was saying, I can't believe how, cunning women are. And I had to think about it. I replied to him, and then I'm even thinking about it more now, and I'll give you my analysis of that. So when a girl says she has a boyfriend, that does not mean she has a boyfriend, as we all know. It means that she doesn't want to talk to you, or she's testing you, or there's many things she could actually mean by that, in addition to having a boyfriend, right? Then she says she's waiting for her brother. Okay. And not only that, the boyfriend was coming up to meet her at that time. So I think that's one of the biggest difference between men and women, is that if a guy's waiting for his girlfriend and she's going to be there any second, a guy generally won't say, I'm here to meet my sister, because he knows that he's going to be standing there and she's going to come along, and then the other person's going to be there, and there's a high chance that his girlfriend's going to find out that he told this new girl that he said he's waiting for his sister, right? So that could cause serious problems, right? So guys generally won't want to risk that, right? However, with women have more choice than men in sexual partners. They just do. And so because of that, they don't have to, or they shouldn't value each guy as highly, because they have options. It's the same as if you live in the Soviet Union during USSR time, and you have to buy a car, you had very limited options. You had to buy, what was it called? What was that car? A Varga, a Lago, or I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, there was like one car, right? You had to buy that. It was from Yugoslavia, and so you had very limited options. But when you're in, and you probably valued that car pretty highly, right? and you valued the mechanic, and everything, right? Because you couldn't get the parts yourself, right? So you had limited options, and you had to kind of, you just thought about it differently than today. Today you got a million car companies, a million mechanics, you got zillions of choices. You got hydrogen, gas, electric, you got different brands from Korea, and you got parts from China that are not authorized. You got so many options, right? So you don't value that one thing as much, right? And so you're like, okay, whatever, I sell my Ford, I get another car. Okay, so women have more choice. So they're going to be just like the guy who has choice in cars. They care. You might love your car, but there's a limit, because there's other cars, right? That's how women are. It's not a good or bad thing. It's not a woman thing. So, for example, a guy who's a player, he's got tons of chicks. A guy who's a serious player, he might actually say the same thing. He might say, I'm waiting for my sister. And then the other girl comes up and she says, oh, you're so-and-so's sister. And then the girl's like, what? You told her she's my sister? And then a player, like a serious player, he might say, yeah, I want to get in her pants. Maybe we could do threesome. And then the girl's going to be offended, right? But she'll stick with him because he knows. He's got this girl wrapped around his finger. So it just depends on your options, is what you think is manipulative, right? Girls have more options than us. And so they're going to take more chances in conversations than we would. And as soon as we get more options, we do the same thing. Not exactly the same. We're men and women are not exactly the same. When I was boning a lot of chicks, I wouldn't have done that just because maybe it's a male guilt or something. I would have felt bad. I just wouldn't. I knew it would work, but I just wouldn't do it. I knew other players that would do that, but I just felt bad. I liked my girlfriends, even if I had a lot of them, and I was not being completely honest with all of them. But at the same time, I just wouldn't do that particular thing because I felt like that was over the line, right? Because they were doing their best for me, right? These were good girls. They were trying hard and making food and, loving me big time, and everything was good. And I just felt like I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't say that if they were coming, especially if I knew they were on the way, right? But I knew players who would, and it worked. Because the girls, it almost like made them like them more. Because they were just like, she knew what he was up to. She knew he's like trying to fuck a girl while he's waiting for her, right? And that does turn girls on. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are techniques that work that I wouldn't employ, because I just didn't feel good about it. But I knew they worked. I wasn't like dumb about it. I knew what was going on. It's just that you choose what your values are, right? And other things I would do that maybe another guy wouldn't do, right? So it's not like anybody's perfect here. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that particular thing, thinking back to my girlfriends, no way. I wouldn't have done that. But a girl has more options, even than a player. A girl can get on Tinder, put a sexy picture tonight, and I don't know how many likes she's going to get. And I don't know how many guys, it depends on the girl, she's going to have willing to drive to her house tonight to fuck her tonight. But I don't know. I'm guessing if a guy does it in like any kind of town with a lot of people, like, fuck, I think it's going to be like 100 or 200. I don't know. It's going to be a lot of fucking people, right? Whereas for guys, we might have, if you're really working it hard, you might have 8 girls or something, right? But you're not going to have hundreds of new people just willing to show up and bone your brains out for free. But girls do have that option. So you can kind of understand why they don't have the same mindset as you. And I think that's part of humanizing women too, is that you understand exactly where they're at. But once you understand, it puts you on edge. That's one of the things why guys don't want to see the red pill, because they just want to believe, like the Matrix, right? They just want to believe that everything's going to be fine. And maybe it will be fine for them. Who knows? But I prefer to know the truth, even if it's very, very uncomfortable. I read that book, Sperm Wars. And a lot of guys who read that book, they, that book made them pretty, it's going to be noisy for a second here. But those guys that read Sperm Wars, and then there was another book called The Red Queen. And both those books were popular in the PUA crowd. And they would, those books would make some guys very, very uncomfortable because it was really talking about the competitive landscape we live in and kind of the truth about genes and why people choose things. And, you know, the odds of someone's actually cheating on you at that time are very high. Like a lot of guys, they think, there are tons of guys, let me tell you this. You'll talk to your grandfather, you talk to your dad, and they'll tell you, oh, you know, I got, you know, your mom, you know, and I just lucked out with her. She was awesome. You know, everything worked out great. You know, you guys are great kids and the family is great. And she's always been loyal to me and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, the woman dies and they find a secret diary where this happens all the time. Where, you know, she was like not only, you know, fucking, you know, not loyal at all, but she actually, the kids were not even his. So that happened. So there's a lot of people, that's one of the problems in figuring life out is that a guy can believe it till the day he dies or till the day she dies, you know, and then never know. And so he'll give you advice based on what he thinks is true. And it might not be true. And also, too, I'm going to say this, too, is sometimes it's like you kind of don't want to know. You know what I mean? Like, do you really want to know that your sweetheart in high school cheated on you that night at the prom? Like, man, I tell you, it's hard, man. But I think that is really what the red pill is. The red pill is really just accepting the truth. And, you know, as it always is, and I'm just going to end on this, is that the truth is never as scary as you think. It's the fear of the truth that really makes you worry and nervous. When you really hear the truth and you really think about it, things will make sense and you won't be as scared, right? So, guys, that's my advice, is run straight into the truth, but it's going to be scary. There's going to be uncomfortable things. But in the end of the day, if you talk to your friends, if you're just honest about it, you know, a lot of guys, they'll even come to a summit and then they won't tell their most embarrassing thing, right? Or the thing they're really worried about until after the summit. We're walking around and I'm just like, dude, why wait? You know, just talk about it, man. There's nothing so embarrassing where, you know, like things that happen to you as a guy, they happen to like a lot of guys. Like it really doesn't have that much to do with you, really. You know, you're not like, you know, like, I mean, really, everybody gets cheated on. You know, that's the thing. There's that great song from the 70s, is Everyone Plays the Fool Sometimes. And, oh, that song is so good. You got to go listen to that song. Everybody Plays the Fool. Oh, man, I think that's what it's called. Everybody Plays the Fool Sometimes. And, man, one, it's a nice song. It's beautiful vocals. Yeah, you know, great song. But, man, there ain't many... There ain't many songs with truth like that. That's Mack truck and you're running you over kind of truth. And, you know, and the guy's singing it as a fucking music star to other people like him. He ain't singing to his audience. He's saying, hey, you know, that these guys are talking, you know, that it's like you write stories about people that you know and understand, right? These guys are the same way. Trust me. I know guys in music and like they're thinking about themselves. That's what they're writing stories about. And he's talking to like Marvin Gaye. He's talking to the coolest guys. And he's saying everybody plays the fools. There's no exception. Because guys at the bottom, they know they get cheated on, right? But not the guys at the top. And that's what I think he's talking to. He's saying everybody. There's no exception to the rule. So if you think you haven't been cheated on, you know, it's, you know, most likely you just don't know, right? Which is great. You know, sometimes there are certain things you just don't want to know. You know, it's better not to know. You just say, hey, it's easier. It's over. It's 20 years ago. You know, I don't need to know. I don't want to know. You know, I really don't want to know. You know, and you know, so that is the thing. Sometimes it's so irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Now, for me, I always prefer knowing. And maybe I'm crazy in that sense, and that's why I have this channel, right? I always want to know. Like I prefer the truth, even if it's super painful, right? You know, I always want to know, like, is real. And I have faith in myself that I will always be able to face any truth. And I don't mean like a tough guy. I mean, I will find a way to work with this thing and integrate it into my life without ruining my life, because other guys have. I look around me, guys survived World War II, guys have survived all kinds of stuff, and there's methods they use. There's ways of thinking, there's ways of acting. And once you admit that you have some kind of problem, then you find somebody who's got the same thing, and then you can emulate the way he survived it. And then, if that doesn't work, now you've accomplished a lot of things already. You've become, your ego's aside, right? You've tried to deal with it. Even if his technique that worked for him doesn't work for you, you'll still feel better because you tried. You will. You'll be like, okay, didn't work. And the guy was honest. I mean, obviously there's people spouting off bullshit, but there's other guys who are saying, hey, and then you realize why it didn't work for you. And then now you understand, you're starting to, it's like you're trying to corner your problem. Like your dad's trying to catch you. He's trying to corner you. Like that's it. You're trying to corner what is my problem and how can I fix it? And eventually I always find a way. And I think there always is a way. And I think also too, the more you do it, the better you get. You get better and better at facing and fixing problems and overcoming them. And that gives you a confidence that you don't have to live ignoring things, right? And also too, obviously, the more you know, the better decisions you're going to make. There's no question about it. Anyway, I just wanted to drop that one off to you guys. I hope you guys are having a good day. It's a short one. I've got 2 weeks. Santa Cruz Summit coming up. Guys are coming in from everywhere. And I'm stoked about that. New guys are coming. I am very stoked. So if you still want to think of you want to come, just get a Spirit Airlines ticket. Come over here if you're in Europe or wherever, some other place, Korea, you've never been to America. Perfect chance to come over. We're going to be hanging out. And we're going to might do a road trip after the summit. And that would be, one of my friends has a car. He wants to travel around. So very likely we'll do some kind of cool road trip. Lots to see around here. Might be down to LA, might be to Yosemite, might be to go wakeboarding. Might be just driving and cruising and having fun. So, I'm up for anything, and I think the guys, and some of the guys will be too. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good day. I hope that kind of breakdown is helpful. I just going to say last thing, I think these breakdowns, the more you hear them, it'll help you to get the tools to break down the next thing. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to break it down perfectly, but it will help you one step towards being able to not only face things, but also to say, wait, how can I tackle this one? What did I do last time? I did this step, I did that step. And then it also opens your mind up. I think part of the reason why guys are shy is because they think, well, it's not going to help anyway, right? But after you overcome something, you'll be like, oh, no, it's the opposite. The more I open up and the better I find good friends, the better chance that I'm actually going to solve this fucking thing and not have to live with this crap in my mind and actually overcome it once and for all, be done with it. That's always my goal. I hate the stuff where you're just kind of like deadening the pain. You're not really solving it. I either want to solve it and destroy it. That's basically what I want to do with every problem. That's my goal with every problem. And I think most problems can be done like that. I'm going to go as far as to say every problem can be done that way. There is a way, guys. There is a way. All right, guys. Hope you're good. Talk to you soon.